We are joined by a very special guest today. Do not go anywhere. We are joined by the world number 13 in FPL right now. He's here revealing his game week 13 team, giving tips on how he got to such an almighty rank, talking captaincy, his chip strategy, introducing all the way from New Zealand. James, welcome to the channel. How are you, mate? And thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks, man. It's good to be here. I think it's interesting because I actually only tuned into the deadline to your stream on Sunday night, and I think it was one of the first times I'd been in there, but the time just suited me being from New Zealand. So good to be here.
Yeah, I had I had a comment in my chat on Sunday, and you mentioned your rank, and I was like, "Is this for real? Is the world number 13 really watching me on my Sunday morning stream?" So I was delighted to have you you come through for me. I said, "Look, contact me and let's have a chat." So look, let's talk a little bit about how you got to the world number 13. But before we do, let's just go back. Like this, you mentioned to me off air, like this is your first season playing FPL proper, right?
Yeah, first season, taking it very seriously, watching a lot more content, keeping a closer eye on injury news, player form, things like that. Hadn't done that as close previously, so it's one of those sensations where you're finally doing well, so you take a closer eye on things, I think.
Yeah, okay. And in terms of other fantasy sports, like you play FPL, you played casually for a few seasons, but other fantasy games, you're a big fantasy gamer, are you?
So basketball is probably the big one, alongside cricket actually. So for me, NBA fantasy, I quite like that. I think one of the challenges with NBA, and we're starting to see it now in fantasy prem, is the number of fixtures that teams are playing. NBA, you've got to keep a really close eye on it because there's games every second day, and teams are traveling across the country in America to go to their opponents. So yeah.
Yeah, okay, I like that. All right, well, look, let's have a look about how you set up for game week one. We'll see your game week one team in a minute, but let's just see an overview of your season so far because game week one you had obviously a very good start. You're finishing game week one and you're in the top 5k already. By game week two, you're in the top 1,000. By game week three, you're in the top 100, and then sort of you yo-yo in and out the top 100. You go, but always within the top 1,000, and then the last few weeks have been big for you. I mean, the thing that jumps out straight away to me when you see this graphic is your chips. You started the season with bench boost, then you went free hit, and then you wildcarded. So a really clear strategy to start the season with going bench boost game week one, which a lot of people talk about and don't do. Free hit in two, wildcard in three, catching all those early price rises, and then triple captain really early as well. Just talk to me a little bit about your theory behind that such aggressive chip strategy.
Yeah, I think the key thing is everyone tends to follow the same trend where they'll wild card around a time when there's good fixture swings. So I think only one person wins fantasy Premier League, so everyone doing that, not all of those people will end up in a good spot. So I think
Yeah.
for me it was just being aggressive early. So if I think about the bench boost in the first week, I was asking myself a few questions. So what's the impact of the Euros on player rest heading into the Premier League starting? Who are those players going to be that are match fit coming into the season that have had preseason time with their teammates?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's really important. I think who's got the best fixtures as well. And I think I identified pretty early, like the fixtures in week one were really good for a few teams.
Yeah.
So I think just targeting those nice and early. That was the same thing for the free hit on week two. So my bench boost team in week one did not have Erling Haaland in it. They obviously had a good game in the second week. I didn't want to miss out on that, so I kept it pretty simple. I want Haaland week two. I don't want to be using transfers, so I'm going to free hit into a team with the same hypothesis as week one. Just
Yeah.
take players who have good matchups, and they've both worked out quite well. I think a lot of it's luck, obviously, but you still have to pick the right players.
Yeah, I think the first couple of weeks of the season always see a lot of goals as well because teams haven't had a ton of time on the training ground. And with that, defenses obviously aren't that well drilled usually. I often always think with the weather being good and the new season and more attacking culture to start the season, keep the fans happy. There's loads of things that go into it, but you do often see lots of goals early on. And obviously, you had a fresh new team in game week one, two, and three. Like that's pretty cool. And many would look at your chip strategy and hear the fact that you're only playing seriously for the first time and see that and go, "Oh, he was just trying to get to world number one in the first few weeks." Well, that should be all of our goal. And I love the fact you point out to win fantasy, you've got to play different to everyone else. And you're quite right. To get a good rank, often the theory is you're wildcard in game week 6 because that's where the fixture swing is. You triple captain in a double game week, whatever. But to win it, you have to buck that trend because you want to be the one and only person doing that. So love that theory, and it's clearly working out very well for you. Let's look at that game week 1 team then, shall we? Because you said you went without Haaland game week 1, but you did reach 100 points. This is your game week 1 team with 100. Like many, you captained Isak, but you did go Jota and Salah and Bruno and Saka. Like you stacked that midfield without Erling Haaland. Talk me through your thinking with game week 1.
I think the key. So I'm a Newcastle fan, so that's the reason for the 3 Newcastle players
I
in the
did
first
wonder.
week. Obviously, it was pretty awful being the first game of the season. I'm watching it at early hours of the morning in New Zealand, and I watch an early red card for a headbutt, and I'm thinking, shit, this isn't looking good. So that was obviously not great. I was actually going to the season. I think Jacob Murphy's probably the pick that stands out there. In preseason, he was an absolute gun. And I was pretty keen on him. I'd watched him in a few of the games. I thought he could cement his place in the side. I think Almiron was probably on the periphery, so there was an opportunity there. It didn't quite work out. He obviously got the early subs. That was a bit unfortunate. But I think the rest of the side, I was just like the fixtures in that first week were great. I think probably the one I ended up being most worried about was Liverpool against Ipswich. Ipswich actually looked really good in that first half, if I remember rightly. And I think I was pretty worried. But eventually, I think it told that Salah hadn't had the same kind of difficulty over that break where he had a lot of internationals, so he had a bit more time to rest. That obviously proved to be pretty pivotal. I think that was probably the key thing. I think Chris Wood again. That's the New Zealand passion there. So I think as much as people say maybe it's looking for a rank 1. Ultimately, I was kind of following the teams that I was pretty keen on from both a fixture point of view, but also just from a interest point of view.
Yeah, like the triple Newcastle, I get it. The fixture run was there, and you're a fan. Pedro Porro scoring, huge. The midfield you can't argue with, and then that bench boost, 19 points. You take 19 on a bench boost. I mean, Anderson with the 0, but Lautaro Martinez got the 7. Chris Wood got you 9, and Sells with the 3. Chris Wood wasn't a player many started the season with. Obviously, the Kiwi connection for you. Like is he the only Kiwi in the Premier League at the moment?
At the moment, he's the only one in a first 11. I think with Chris Wood, the key thing he's been an incredibly underrated striker for his whole time in the Premier League. He's always been a 10-goal a season striker. He's a player that brings others into play. He's great from set pieces. Obviously, I think it's one of those players where he's in fantasy prem you take the value. I often think about this like you're picking players on merit. So if you take the value of the players away, does this person deserve to be in my team on merit? If the answer is yes, it doesn't matter. I think it's the same argument that people have had for Rodgers as well. João Pedro, it doesn't matter that they're super cheap. If they're in form and they're playing well, they should be there on merit. That's the kind of thinking. In the same way, there might be a week where my team value is 93 mil because I've decided to take out, one of the premium players, but it's because I think there's someone else that's in better form than they are.
Yeah, I like that. You're not. I think a lot that have played the game for years, that can work as a disadvantage. You are blinded by the price tag. So for me, I've been playing FPL for, I don't know, I think 15, 16 years now, ridiculous, like a huge amount of time. I'm used to seeing the players that are expensive deliver points, right? Over time, that's what happens. But therefore, we have this bias in our head that we can't take a player out that is super expensive because he's going to deliver points every week. And it's like, well, no. Cunha has been delivering way more points recently than Haaland. Price is irrelevant at times. So that's really an interesting approach and a brave approach by you. But clearly, it's worked really well. Okay, so this was your game week 1 team, and we saw your 100 points. And then obviously, as the season goes on, like it's a very, very good start. You're in that top 100. When you get into the top 100 and you've used all your chips, is it just a case of keep the same aggressive strategy with your transfers? Like, were you captaining and differentials? Were you going rogue at times with transfers, or did you move to more sort of a cautious template-y approach, having used a lot of your chips by 4 game weeks in and actually still having an amazing rank? Was it a way of consolidation?
Not particularly. I think I kept the same captain. It's been Salah the whole way through.
Wow, has it?
There's no. It's one of those things, right? There's no reason to go away from what's working. If you're looking at Salah and he's in form, then why change it? I think people will have the same concern this week. They'll see the City fixture. They might change their captain to Perma. I think something that you've got to think about is Salah is in form. City is not. The way that Spurs exploited City will be the same way that Salah does. you would expect Salah to have a good game, and so I think it's just about keeping it simple. You can change to another captain and get a good outcome, but I think it's just keeping it easy.
So have
There's that thought.
you've had Salah captain every single game week, have you?
Yeah, pretty much every game week except for, or maybe there's maybe 2 or 3 where I've captained Haaland, and
Yeah.
those captaincies were also the ones where he got hat tricks. So they've been quite.
Love that.
But there is a little bit of luck there because generally I've kept Salah the whole way through. I think Haaland on the Ipswich game was
Yeah,
one
on
of
your free
those
hit game week 2 and
captains
your
ones.
wild card in 3, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, there was a few Haaland captains in there.
Talk to me about hits. Before you do, guys, if you're enjoying the video, drop a comment, give us a message for James, drop a like, please subscribe to the channel if you're new around here. James is one of our subs and tunes in on Sunday morning. So do catch those Sunday morning shows. Sunday morning in England, not in New Zealand. Hence, I have a lot of watching, I think, in the other side of the world where the time zone is perhaps a little bit more favourable for them. So yeah, you can get chatting to James on the Sunday morning streams. James, talk to me about hits because you took a -16 earlier this season in game week 10. We can see it on screen. Before we talk about this -16, how many other hits have you taken? Have you taken any -8s, -4s this season?
No, so this is the only one, which I'm happy about. I think it's just
Yeah.
being targeted and very firm in your decision making when you do it.
Yep. Yeah. I'm going to go back to your season history so we can see what happened off the back of that hit, and then we'll go through it in detail. So it was game week 10 you took the hit and you went from 440 in the world to 40. So by game week 11, you're 40th. And that was off the back of a -16. Wow. Genuinely, I didn't know the answer to where that hit had gone until I just checked it now. I was thinking, did this work out or not? It clearly worked out. What a huge gain that is, 440 to 40. And this is what you did. You went Vissa, Saka, Palmer, Mikolenko, and Cunha. So they all left your team, or they all came in?
So they all came in.
They
So
came in and you sold Haaland, yeah.
yeah, so the thinking here was there was those big fixture swings. Generally, people were wild carding that.
Right.
This was a move around maintaining my position. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
thinking here a lot of people are going to be wild carding in soon to these players. And so the decision there was I don't want to be left with my pants down and
Yep.
having them catch up to me. So this is me kind of forcing a move through that I think is justified. Um, it's one of those things, the worst that can happen is that you don't get first. So, and most people will have that happen. So I think the key things there were when I was looking at Saka, I was thinking Odegaard's back soon. That makes a big difference to the way that Arsenal plays. I'm looking
Yep.
at Cole Palmer, thinking their run coming up is really good. I'm seeing Brentford fixtures, thinking they're really good ones.
Yeah.
I'm looking at Cunha, thinking back to week 2 when they lost 6-2 to Chelsea, and I'm thinking Wolves actually attacked quite nicely in that. I'll make a note of that for the future because it doesn't matter if they're losing 6-2 if he scores 2 of them.
Yeah.
um, so it's that kind of thinking. The same way for Everton. I think Everton went into their block and started playing a lot more defensively with Sean Dyche. So that made it a pretty easy decision to think, oh, there might be 1 or 2 clean sheets in there from him as well.
Mate,
Um,
it was clearly a great move. You moved from a structure of Haaland and Salah to Saka, Palmer, Salah. Do you feel like for the festive period, the next stretch of fixtures, they're the three: Saka, Palmer, Salah? It means a no Haaland team, but obviously when you're playing so much money, you're limited elsewhere in terms of other premiums. The threemium of Saka, Palmer, and Saka does feel right at the moment, doesn't it?
yeah, and I've also got Bruno Fernandes in there as well. I think
Wow,
I
yeah.
was onto him pretty early. I think in the same way that someone like João Pedro, I'd say it's not even just the 3 premiums. It's also Cunha and Pedro. I'm looking at them thinking these guys could match points with those guys. So I think when you look at that -16 as well, I put the numbers down because I was thinking, well, how many points did I actually gain from that? So I lost 28 points from transferring out those players. That was the amount of points that those players got. You
Yeah.
add on the -16, so that's like 40 -44. But I gained 89 points in that period, so it was a +45 swing. That's
Gosh.
obviously that's where that rank differential comes in, that 400 to 40.
That's absolutely
Um,
massive. And when you look at 400 to 40 in terms of percentage and like the rank cut there, that is obscene, especially on such an aggressive move. But yeah, I mean, your entry point for players like Cunha, like you just had a haul straight away. Like he's had a 12 and a 16 in the last 2 weeks. Like that's
mm.
huge. You've had big points from you've had clean sheets from Mikolenko, you've had Visser goals. So you're really well set. I want to see your game week 13 team and stay tuned for that, guys. We'll see it in just a minute. Before we do, I asked you off air, James, and I know the answer to this. There's a lot of managers at your rank that use a ton of FPL resources. They are glued to FPL YouTube. They are using a lot of third-party websites out there. Most watching will be very familiar with Fantasy Football Scout. They're a company that I've been partnered with since I've been playing FPL pretty much. And they're like the number one third-party tool out there, whether you want to look at certain stats or fixture tickers or a wealth of information that you can't access on, say, the FPL site, the real nitty gritty stuff. They've got a Black Friday deal on, which is, I think, later, I think by tomorrow, by Thursday this week, will launch for a week where they're giving people complete free access for 7 days in the members area. Do check it out. There's a link in the description if you fancy it. James, talk to me about your third-party resources and how you haven't used them and that you've just gone off like gut feel, watching games and absorbing some of the stats on the FPL site, right?
Yeah, so it's for me. It hasn't. I haven't used any third-party websites. I've stuck to the Premier League website. I watch a little bit of fantasy prem content from a few different creators,
Yeah.
including yourself, obviously. Um, I think it's using other people's perspectives to kind of either to kind of add to your own,
Yeah.
or validate what your feelings are about particular players as well. That I saw the same thing that this person did is quite useful.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice. Okay. I like that. And in terms of like stats, eye test, you don't get to watch a ton of live games because of the time zone where you are, other side of the world. Kickoff times aren't the friendliest. Do you absorb content from highlights, from watching a few games, or are you looking at the data? How are you making your decisions each week?
So I normally watch extended highlights for probably 6 or 7 of the games, and I'll normally get to watch the first game. Normally, if there's an early kickoff, I'll be able to watch that because that's normally around 12:30 in the morning, right? So that's probably the easiest one to watch, or a 7:30, 8 o'clock kickoff. My time's normally quite good as well.
Yeah.
So I might get to catch 1 or 2 games a week in full, and then the rest of them will be watching extended highlights. But I think as well, sometimes you can kind of get caught up. Like if you're watching a player you like, but they're versing a good side, you kind of have to give them a certain amount of leeway to go. Actually, they're just versing a really good team. You've just got to give them a pass.
Yeah.
I think if you can do that and accept that sometimes players have bad games, then it takes away a bit of the emotion from it, and it's more rational.
Yeah, okay. No, I like that. Mate, you're such a cool, calm and collected FPL manager. My hopes for you are to you got a real shot here at world number 13. Don't want to put too much pressure on you, but you mentioned to me earlier, and stay tuned, guys. We'll see James's team in a sec. You've actually met a former FPL champion in New Zealand. There is a Kiwi that's won it a couple of years ago, right?
Yes, yeah, there is. Same city, so there must be something in the water here.
And that's Wellington, is it?
Yeah, that's in New Zealand, so
I know where I'm going
it's
on my summer
pretty cool.
holiday. Make me a better FPL manager. I'm going swimming in
Yeah.
Wellington. Okay, well, shall we have a look then at how you're set up for game week 13? Like your world number 13, it's game week 13. You've made a transfer already, right? So Lewis Hall has come in to your team.
Yeah, so I made this move quite early. In a way, I was hoping that the Newcastle game against West Ham would go a little bit better, obviously, but I think the Newcastle run coming up is fairly good. I think we actually saw that Hall actually pushed up yesterday when Newcastle was down, so he didn't come off, which was a good sign for me.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, so you
but I
made
think a
this
lot.
move before Newcastle played West Ham.
Yes, this was before the game. I was kind of thinking more ahead to future games. So regardless of
Yeah,
the
yeah,
outcome of that game, the move was
yeah,
was made already.
yeah,
Part of it as well was wanting to get away from Guardiola from City. I think it's one of those things where, you know, yes, at some point City will start keeping clean sheets again, but we're not sure when that will be, and I don't want to be there to find out.
yep,
So moving away from that frees up a bit more money. So I'm sitting with around 3.5 million in the bank, even with my current side, which is a pretty good place to be.
Oh, nice.
But I think the easy one, I think Salah captain again. There's no reason to get off him. He continues to be in form. He's playing well. I was a little bit worried. I saw the media recently where he was talking about his contract situation. I'm thinking, you don't need to talk about that this week.
Yeah.
So that was a little bit frustrating. But look, I think he's the best captaincy option. He's in form. He's versing a team that is probably lacking a bit of confidence. Defensively, they look pretty burnt out, City. So I just think it's prime for Liverpool to be exploiting those flanks, and I can just see Salah getting a few one-on-ones really.
Gvardiol at fault for a couple of goals in the Champions League as well. So City are just on the ropes, losing their 3-goal lead to Feyenoord 3-3 isn't pretty. Okay, well, I'm keen to know what you're doing with a fair few of these players moving forward. Like you've got the best looking midfield going, that 5. But I want to know what your plans are for players like Perma when the fixtures perhaps turn. I want to know how you're gonna, or if you're gonna invest more funds in the back line, because that's a proper budget back line, and obviously you've got money in the bank to go to maybe a double Arsenal defense or whatever. But so far it's working for you. Slim defense, slim in goal even, and then a lot of your money has been in the attacking positions. And as you say, those forwards don't need the high price tag. The Brazilian boys are doing it for you in João Pedro and Cunha. Let's get to that in just a second. Before we do, I need to give a shout out to Sleeper, because I'm giving away a PS5 this week. It's a pretty big deal, just this game week. And you've seen this when I've spoken about it on my Sunday streams, James. I give away every week either a £100 Amazon voucher or a PS5 for selected weeks. And actually, I sent a £100 Amazon voucher recently to Australia, to Gucci in Melbourne. All you got to do is predict the outcome of the 10 games this weekend. James, I guess my question for you is, when you look at the 10 games this weekend, do you see any upsets? Like, which is the game you look at and go, one, I could see an upset there, and which is the game you think that's got the biggest upside for FPL? For example, Liverpool City. Who do you think will be the highest scoring team of the game week, and which fixture do you think could come with the biggest upset?
I think you've got to say Liverpool's actually got to be a good chance to actually put City away quite comfortably. I think that's what I'm looking for. I think look, Haaland could go and score a double. I think he's been quite unlucky not to have scored a few goals during his run in the Prem where he hasn't got any points. So he could score a double. I just think the way that City looks so open defensively that I think Liverpool could put 4 or 5 past them, to be honest. So it's just about very very surface level, but I think that could be maybe the surprise. I think that Liverpool just put them away comfortably. That's
like that.
probably that'll be the easy one. That's probably top of mind for me at the moment, just not having any City assets on the side.
Yeah, and look, you're backing it with Salah captain still, so I'm absolutely here for that. Good stuff, guys. There's a link in the description if you want to play Sleeper. It's just literally predicting those 10 games, home, draw, away. If it's a tie, like, I reckon the winner this week will probably get 9 out of 10. If 2 people get 9 out of 10 on YouTube, I'll do a live spin the wheel, and we'll see who wins it. So yeah, good luck to you guys. It's free to enter, and you got to download the app. It takes seconds. Decisions with your team, mate, long term. Where this was your game week 1 team, let's just get to your game week 13 team. Long term, where are you planning on using transfers? You've got 2.5-ish million in the bank, and at the moment, I guess with this team, no free transfers, but you'll soon be accumulating them. What are your plans?
Yeah, I think for me, Brentford assets, yes, probably in the future would be offloading them. I still think against Villa and Newcastle they can get points, so I'm not too worried about those games that are coming up for them after Leicester.
Mm-hmm.
I think eventually the plans would be to move Wissa on to someone like a Nicholas Jackson, maybe an Ollie Watkins. I am a little bit worried about his minutes over a busy period when they've got a capable backup. That does worry me a little bit.
Yep.
I think in midfield, Mbeumo would probably be coming out. This is where I think I can get a differential in. So
Okay.
where I'm thinking is someone like a Jared Bowen or a Mohamed Kudus once he comes back into the side. He's currently suspended, but he's not suspended soon.
I love that shout on Kudus, because he's quite a bit cheaper than Bowen as well.
Yeah, he's down to something like 6.2. So this is another part of the strategy has been picking up cheap players that pass the eye test and have good fixtures coming up.
Right.
So Kudus meets that for mine. I think they've got some good games coming up. It could go wrong, but I think it's one of those ones where you're trying to be number one. not many people will have those kind of players. If they perform, that'll keep me up the top. The other options would be someone like a Matoma from Brighton or an Odegaard doubling up on Arsenal in midfield. The defence, I'm worried, but at the same time, I'm not. I think there hasn't been many clean sheets this season, and I think the players that we would expect to get a ton of points, like Trent, for example, hasn't really done any double-digit hauls. So, is he really worth the 7 million? I'd say probably not. I'd rather be getting a Kanate or a Van Dijk from Liverpool, maybe an Alisson.
Yep.
So I think probably defence. If I was bringing in any defenders right now, the only ones I'd be considering are Arsenal and Liverpool.
Yeah.
And I think that would be regardless of fixture runs in the fixtures coming up. Those would be the two sides that I would trust to keep some clean sheets.
Yeah. Arsenal's defensive data is improving, and last season they were head and shoulders the best defense in the league. And they've had a bit of a rough ride, but surely they're going to start keeping loads of clean sheets now. And we just saw one against Forest. Gabriel picked up a knock in the Champions League. He went off with 5 minutes to go in Lisbon. So with no Gabriel this weekend, potentially, maybe their clean sheet odds drop a little bit. But you'd expect someone like Calafiori to come in and play that role at centre back. So let's see. Arteta probably won't tell us about Gabriel. But yeah, that's interesting. A lot of your forward planning transfers are actually, like, straight away you spoke about attacking positions there. Like, is it a Jackson or a Bowen or a Kudus? Like, you're looking at already using transfers in midfield and forward before you even mention defenders to me, which is quite apt, knowing I asked you specifically about defenders. I'm like, you are always thinking goals, assists, playing front foot, aggressive FPL. I can completely tell by your approach, and keep referring to it. And I love this. It's to win FPL, you've got to play differently to everyone else. So there's no point in going the same way as everyone else. And you're not playing the season for a good rank, right? You're not playing to say I finished in the top 1,000. That would be amazing, but you are absolutely playing to be number one here.
Yeah, I think you have to be putting a lot more time into watching highlights and things than I would have if things weren't going as well. So I think when you're in a position where you're top 100k, even like top million at the moment, if you're trying to make changes at the moment, you should be trying to aim to get to number one somehow. Otherwise, if that's not your plan, then
there's a lot of managers that it's not their plan, which is I always find quite funny, because I would play to win. I've never been at these dizzy heights, but absolutely, I'm sure everyone, if they're going to be world number 13, they're playing to win. But there's a lot of managers that would be around 1,000 that would go, I'm just playing to have my best ever rank. I'm not going to start buying Mohamed Kudus, you know. So I love that, mate. Fair play. I'm just thinking as a sort of future outlook. What are your sort of ambitions with this team in terms of potential chip strategy for the chips you've got left? Obviously, we don't know about the mystery chip. We will get another wild card again fairly early in January. Do you have any sort of plans on when you might use that and for the second half of the season?
Yeah, I think the way that I'm intending to use the second wildcard is probably a few weeks before the double game week, whenever that comes around. The plan would be to set up a side looking towards that double game week. Hopefully there's a few teams that have 2 good fixtures in that. And the plan would be to build up a few free transfers after that, so that way I can kind of wildcard into a good team for a bench boost, and then I can quickly move away from that the week after with a few free transfers. I think the ability to get to 5, I think, makes me think I should wildcard 5 weeks before, build up 5 free transfers going into that, and then that way on the other side I've got a mini wildcard to get out of that bench, to get out of that double game week side.
Yeah, okay, I like that. Nice, mate. Any final thoughts from you want to add? I mean, it's been awesome having you on. I can't. This is your YouTube debut, I guess, on certainly in the FPL space, which is really exciting for me. I had both FPL Chai, who was at similar ranks to you at times last season, and before that, he won FPL 2 years ago, Ali Hangarov. Around this point in the season, he came on my YouTube channel for the first time ever, and he went on to win FPL. So maybe that's a good omen.
Well, I'd take that if it can get me a trip to the UK and I can go and watch Newcastle in the northeast. I'd be pretty chuffed. So
Oh,
That'd be pretty
nice,
cool.
mate. Well, if you want to join my WhatsApp group as I have a channel members offering. If you want to become an Ultras member, I would love to include you in the WhatsApp group because we've actually got a couple of Aussies in there, including Neil Robertson, the world snooker champ, former world snooker champ from I think he's from Melbourne. And Gucci's in there from Melbourne, and we've got one or two others in Australia. So yeah, we'll chat offline, but I'd love to add you in the group. And anyone, if they do want to join the WhatsApp group, there's links in the description there to become an ultra. There's only a group of about 20 of us, which is lovely. I want to keep it quite small. Guys, thank you so much for watching. On your way out, please do hit that like button and please do subscribe to the channel. I'm sure we'll be checking in with James again very soon. So stay tuned for that, and we'll see you again for another video. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.